Welcome to Game.Set.Chat live at a distance. I'm Chanda Rubin.
And I'm Zina Garrison.
And I'm Pam Shriver.
You knew Pam had to speak up for herself. In typical fashion, we are joined happily. Pam Shriver. And not sure if we've stopped. We've been having some technical difficulties here. So unfortunately, we haven't been able to get our live stream going, but we're going to keep talking as if we are on. But Pam, welcome. How have things been? What have your days been like? We're all kind of having to adjust.
Well, my days have been actually pretty jam-packed. I mean, thanks to my 3 kids, all of school age. I have a high school freshman, and I have 2 8th graders. They go to 2 different schools, so 2 very different distant learning programs. The twins have a much more interactive one, a lot of Zoom meetings, and they're always really good with technology, unlike me. But it's a lot because I'm also, our housekeeper's on leave. So, you got to do a lot. Like right now I have dusting wrist. Like I dusted too much 2 days ago. So I've got like tendonitis right there.
Pam, you're doing too much.
I learned like, I had to move to my left hand, like the vacuuming and like the dusting. I got to do more with my left hand because, as we know, we've all overused. We're all 3 of us are right-handers.
Yeah.
And so our right arm's been abused a little bit.
Yeah, we got to stretch after. Remember, got to keep everything loose. Zina and I have kind of talked about it a little bit. How different all of our schedules have had to be. So I have a little one. I've got a 3-year-old, and then I have a 10-year-old stepdaughter. And so I've been doing the homeschooling as well, and just trying to keep up, trying to fit as much of a routine into days that are just so not routine, and doing it for different ages. So it's been interesting, and I've been cooking, which for me, it's huge.
Well, I know Zina's a great cook.
Yes. And how's your cooking going, Pam?
Can you virtually cook for me during the rest of the pandemic? Actually, 2 years ago, when my housekeeper had a medical problem 2 years ago and took a leave of absence, I brought somebody into the house that could help with tutoring. And she also likes to cook. And I gave her the choice. She's like mid-20s. She was an elite swimmer at University of Miami. And I gave her the option of either going back to Minnesota and riding out the pandemic with her family, but she actually chose to stay here. She lives on the bottom floor. So I actually do have a second adult here, which with 3 kids, that gives me, because I'm divorced, single mom, have full custody. So I'm really grateful. And one of the things Heather's likes to do and she's good at is cooking.
Yeah, that's
so
fantastic.
I'm happy. Yeah.
I'm kind of jealous now.
Well, that always works, Pam, but we're going to start off. I want to go back to some memories, because one of the memories I always talk about, and everyone always asks me, is when we roomed together at the Olympics in 1988, and it was NBC, and I woke up only to find out that you had taken a picture of me sleeping.
Well, I never slept. She was like the greatest sleeper ever. Not only is she a great cook, she like slept more in one night than I did like in a week. Anyway, go ahead.
Well, it's such a cute thing, because I'll never forget calling home, and my sister and them were like, "Why did you let Pam take a picture of you sleeping?" And I actually said the same thing. I said, Pam doesn't sleep. I can sleep anywhere, subway, bus, it don't matter. But
airplane.
Only thing now, I have snoring that comes along with it. But let's talk.
So while you bring up our rooming together,
Goodness.
that was wait. It has the reflection. So that's Russ Adams took this picture of the USTA, the late great Russ Adams. So this is a picture of me getting my medal, and I'm sort of eclipsing Zina, who's on the other side of the podium. And this was, our gold medal match is one of the matches in my 19 years of playing. I remember that match as much as I remember any match I played. I don't know about you, Zina.
Did you remember I was nervous as hell trying to serve?
What do you mean? What do you think I was? How do you think I was filling up at net? So we played the Czech team, Sukova Novotna, and it's in the finals, and we ended up at, I don't know, was it 9-all? And then we got up 8-9. We broke. Zina's serving for it. I remember I said something really clever, like just get a lot of first serves in. And then it took us maybe 7 or 8 match points. And then we finally did it.
So all on Zina's serve, the match points?
Oh yeah, all the match points were on that I remember.
No.
It was the longest service game to close it out.
And as we said, my serve compared to Pam's serve, it would have been great to have the other way, but she did. She actually kind of made me laugh at that moment. That kind of relaxed me a little.
Well,
when she said,
and that's what. Yeah, you know what? I'm telling you, I did a podcast the other day with one of the more popular tennis podcasts that they've been around for years and years, and they were reminiscing about our Fed Cup win in Prague with Martina and Chrissy when Martina first went back to Prague, then Czechoslovakia still, and then she asked me a lot of questions about playing with Martina, and I said, well, one of the reasons we liked each other's humor, and being able to laugh in stressful moments. I specifically brought that up. So the fact that you remember that we had some laughter when we were at our most stressed that's good. I think we have to laugh a lot during the pandemic, by the way.
We need to laugh a lot because what's going on, and it's so funny because I was also thinking the other day is you were one of the first people I called when I went through Hurricane Harvey, and
oh my gosh, we were
Chrissy, and then I remember waking up and you having the pictures of your fire. So, girl, we have gone through some stuff.
I know.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's like as adults we kind of have the tools to deal with. I feel for my kids a little bit with a double whammy. And Zina made reference, and my house is very near where the Getty fire started. So obviously in California, and I know Chanda, you both live in. What am I saying? We all live in areas where you can have these natural disasters. But I'll tell you what, growing up in Baltimore, I didn't understand a bushfire from a wildfire I knew there were forest fires, but I can't believe what this West Coast has been through. Same thing in Australia, when things get so dry for so long and then the winds pick up. It's like my nightmare now in October or November when it's been dry for a few days and then you start to hear the Santa Ana winds. It's like it's like a trauma. But I feel bad, really bad for my kids because they've had a couple of really disrupting things. And the twins, like so many of the members of class of 2020, I just feel for, whether you're an 8th grader about to graduate or whether you're, high schooler or college, and you can't do all the fun culminating events of a senior year. I feel for a lot of people right now, needless to say, the people who have family members who are struggling with the virus, old people who are afraid they might get it, people who are at risk. So there's a lot of prayers going out there to everybody.
Well, I'm curious, Pam, because one of the reasons Zina and I started this was, to kind of do something, to reconnect, be able to connect with people, to kind of give people a little something to latch onto, some entertainment value, and also, trying to garner support for ZGA, Zina Garrison Academy. And so, it was twofold, but a lot of times you do things like this and it sort of takes on a life of its own. You don't know exactly how it's going to go. And we just started it and it's been fun. And more than anything, that's kind of, what we want to bring. But I'm curious, your thoughts. We just learned that the Laver Cup is not going to be held this year. It's postponed until 2021. We know of so many other postponements, cancellations. There are tournaments that are still kind of on the books. What's your sense for when we would be able to get started? Just, with all of your experience, what you've seen, what you're hearing.
Yeah. Well, living in California, and specifically in Los Angeles, so there's two leaders that we have been pretty impressed with out here, and that would be Gavin Newsom and Mayor Garcetti. And so I listen to the federal government's daily brief as well. It's a little more challenging for different reasons to listen to that, but I feel like what I've learned from the governor of this great state of California and the mayor of Los Angeles is to really not expect things like live sporting events with fans attending until there's a really good inoculation where most of the population can be covered. So, I mean, you see the PGA Tour announced middle of June, they're going to start their first 4 events without any fans, and they hope to phase in fans. It's obviously going to be different. You're not going to be able to pack in people into any place. And maybe unless they can prove they've had it and they have some sort of coverage, but there's so many unknowns. So I don't see tennis returning to normal until, there's an inoculation so that we know we're not going to get it in a crowded situation. Otherwise, I think there's hope that it can be played like for the television audience. Those are things people are working on right now. I know at the USTA really hard. They're trying to figure it out. But I think bringing people from all parts of the globe together is like really a scary thing right now. And they've got to figure out if they're going to do that with players coming from all over the world, how do they quarantine them properly before they start play? And there's just so many things to think about. So I don't know. I feel for the athletes that are in the middle of their careers and they have this pause, but they can also look at it. Some may say, you know what, my body needed a break, and make the most of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I just want to mention, so we've had a few technical difficulties. What problem we're having right now is we're not able to go live to Facebook, from this app that we're using. So I've actually kind of put it on my phone, recording it on my phone. So we're live, and people are waiting, have been waiting to watch. So we're kind of making do with what we have. But hopefully everybody, kind of bears with us and just enjoys, the conversation, and we'll keep it going. Go from there. So
yeah, there's a lot of. I'd say it right now. You have to be really flexible with everything. It's like technology. I feel like technology is held up incredibly well. I think my kids will all 3 be in distant learning at the same time. My Wi-Fi still holds up, but there's just so many demands on these. Apps like we're using now or people's phones. And so everyone just has to be patient with glitches. And
exactly.
In the scheme of things, it's not a big deal, is it?
Well said.
And saying all that, Pam, I think we have the best sport for learning how to adapt. I always say that's one great thing about tennis. You have to adapt when you're playing the matches. No ball is the same, no weather's the same. It's all. So those are things that. So some of the. What are some of the life lessons that you have taught your kids?
That I learned from the tennis court. Well, I think to learn to compete, and I don't mean just to compete in a sport, but I feel like life is actually quite the competition. Like just dealing with this pandemic one day at a time. It's like a long athletic event that I feel like I'm in training to do this right now. So like I'm doing certain things with my self-care that I would have done as an athlete. Like I'm working out every day. I'm trying to make sure my lungs stay strong. Just in case at some point I get it, I want as big and I want my lungs to be in as good a shape as possible. I'm eating as well as I can. That's another thing we try to do as an athlete. Try to get enough sleep. But that's been hard. The kids, sometimes they have a hard time getting to sleep right now. Everyone's having the strangest dreams. I don't know what it is about a pandemic and dreams. But, I think tennis taught me a lot. Basically just to never give up and to persevere through whatever situation. So I kind of feel like my tennis is serving me well right now.
Yeah, the never give up is definitely something, and as you know, I've had an eating disorder for a very long time. The isolation has been really tough on me. But the great thing about it is being able to go back through some of those, things where my triggers would go off, and I would go back and put myself in a tennis situation, and it's actually been able to help. So, that's been really good.
I see
Well,
my,
I'm curious. So
yeah.
you guys were talking about the '88 Olympics. So we've got questions, of course. We've got some people on live, and they want to know, Pam.
Every time you mention it, 88 Olympics, go ahead.
I mean, we've kind of talked to Zina about it a little bit, but I always want to get kind of your side. I mean, you talked about the match points, but midway through early rounds, did you kind of feel that it was going to be a special year, that it was something, like that was about to happen?
Well, 88 was actually that was the last year I was in the top 10 in singles. I'd had 10 really good years, and the Olympics I feel like was almost like the crowning achievement. I did really well the first couple of tournaments after the Olympics. I remember I won Zurich, the indoor tournament, and then I beat Steffi Graf at the year-ending championships it was her golden Grand Slam year, and I beat her in the semis. And then literally, that was like the end of my singles career at the end of 88. But there was an interruption. My son Sam was looking for his headsets because some of the classes require headsets. So I apologize. I got interrupted on my train of thought. But just trying to think about the Olympics. I found it. I don't know about you, Zina. I found it really, and I feel terrible for the athletes who are on course, and that's been the biggest, obviously, sporting event that's been affected is the Olympic Games. But I found coming together with that shared experience of playing in Olympic Games with people that you only had the Olympics in common with, and the fact you were a world-class athlete was fascinating. The people we met, the different sports, the athletes. I mean, Zina and I, when she wasn't sleeping, we were meeting a lot of athletes from a lot of different sports.
Well, that's funny you mentioned that, Pam, because we really dove into the whole Olympics experience, and we met a lot of people. I don't know about you, but Jackie Joyner Kersey and also Carl Lewis is still some of my very good friends, and I still. What about,
can I mention a guy or two?
Besides, no, you did not.
Was there a wrestler? Can I mention a particular wrestler?
Okay. That's what happens when you know somebody.
Where is Kenny Monday these days?
You know what? I actually kind of saw him on Facebook maybe like 4 or 5 years ago. So he's still around, but I haven't talked to him in a while. But, back to all of our great people that we met.
Yeah. Zina and I, we enjoyed the wrestlers, the water polo players, the rowers, the swimmers, track and field.
I got the picture.
All right, so we also have to talk about who else we roomed. Zina was my roommate, but we had a apartment that was like, I think it was like a 4-bedroom. It was
yes.
So it was Marty.
Okay, so there may be some people who have just joined where we've come on. So we're talking about the '88 Olympics, just to set this up. Keep going, Pam. You can continue.
Okay, sorry, about the '88 Olympics. So I'm just trying to think, Zina. All right, so Chrissy didn't stay. She was on the team, but she didn't stay in our dorm. But it was Brad Gilbert, Tim Mayotte, Marty Reeson, you, me.
Michael J?
No, Michael wasn't on that team. He may have been in the one.
Well, definitely Brad Gilbert.
Yeah, and I think the late Ken Flock, because he was playing with Robert Seguso, but Robert and Carling Bassett, who was on the Canadian tennis team, they were together in the family village. But there were like 6 of us, 6 or 7. We were the only 2 gals.
Well, what I remember about that, sharing that apartment more than anything, tennis had just come back into the Olympics, and we were all professionals. But we were a little bit spoiled, so it was kind of like we kind of had a life where what's going on with this whole dormitory kind of thing. But we enjoyed it. We had a good time. So
you remember how the kimchi? I'm sorry. Go ahead. I was just reminiscing about the cafeteria and how strong. It's the first time I had ever tasted kimchi.
You have one of the best memories of people. I mean, it's mind-boggling. The matches you remember, the situation. I'm constantly amazed by it. When we work together, we play. I mean, it's amazing. So
Well,
I'm curious. I'm curious
sorry, go
about one
ahead.
thing, and you can kind of comment on that too. But with the experiences you had playing the Olympics, the Olympic village, kind of that whole environment, which I've been a part of as well when I've played the 96 part of the 96 Olympic team as well as 2004 for me. But I'm curious how you kind of maybe feel that's changed, the Olympics as they have gone on in history. How has that feeling, the camaraderie, has it changed at all? Are
Well,
there things that
I
are a
would have,
little bit different?
yeah. I mean, listen, I have only been to 2 Olympic Games. The '88 Games, and then I went to the Atlanta Games in '96 as just a view, just to watch. I went with it was the last trip I made with my late sister Marion. Actually, that was a very emotional trip. We rented a house out by Stone Mountain near where the tennis was, but it was also near Conyers where all the horse events, and my sister loved horseback riding. So we shared that trip together. So I haven't been to an Olympic Games since '96, but I would think that what we've seen in tennis in the last 20 years would be played out over many other sports, meaning, that the entourages have gotten bigger, and that the players are a little more to themselves within their teams. Now, how that plays out in an Olympic team, I don't really know, but I would think, I don't know, it's different because of social media, but Zina, what do you think? I mean, I don't, that's a good question, Chan. I hadn't thought about it.
Yeah, from playing on the teams and also being, coaching the teams as well. I think it definitely is. People got a little bit more. I don't want to say you kind of had to humble yourself because you weren't just the only athlete, that just playing tennis where you used. So when you come into the Olympics, all of a sudden you're just one of many. And a lot of times, a lot of players have problems with that, especially if you have big egos and which tennis.
I don't know
players
anybody with a big ego. I don't know anybody with a big ego.
Can't think of one.
But that's that's a hard thing sometimes to, what I notice as a player and also coaching, when you come in there sometimes and you're not willing to, just be a part of the team, but you want to just stick out, then you have a very hard time. And then it transfers on playing on the court as well. So,
there's no I in team.
No, I mean, it's an absolutely completely different experience, even, as one of the top player in your sport, and you are walking alongside, the top players in basketball and all these other disciplines that, Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant. I mean, it's incredible when you are in that environment, how different it is. And, you just have a different outlook. But we have some questions from viewers. So one of the things we like to do is take questions and make it interactive. So we have a question from Adam, who's been on probably every show now that we've had. But yeah, and we're happy about it. But he's got 4 questions, so you can kind of take them, in parts.
Let me get my pen.
So get your pen, jot it down. So he wants to know about 1978, getting to the finals of the U.S. Open, your win against Martinez, and then the final against Everett. Doesn't ask a specific question, but just wants to know kind of what that was like, what your thoughts are on it. How did you become Martinez's partner? Yeah. You had a 109 match winning streak, Pam, the two of you?
Yes. Did I
know that? Oh my goodness. And then the best match you ever
were born
as a broadcaster.
That's what I love about Pam.
And then the best match you ever called as a broadcaster.
All right. Did I miss? That's only 3. Did I miss a 4th? How Martinez partnership best match called as a broadcaster?
And the 109 match winning streak.
Oh yeah, 109, of course. All right. That's right. Okay. All right.
How is that possible?
And I'm going to try and be brief because I know Adam has to get back to Eve. So 78 U.S. Open. I was 16 and 2 months playing in my second major. I got seeded actually 16. I was ranked about 19 in the world, but there were a couple injuries. So I was excited to get the 16th seed. It's the first time that they ever had 16 seeds. And then I had my place in the draw that was a little protected. Virginia Wade was my top 8 seed. She got upset by Lili Faroud, the current Stanford women's head coach for decades. So my part of the draw opened up a bit. I had a softer quarterfinal opponent than I would have otherwise. And then really the match of the tournament for me was beating Martina, who had won her first major just 6-7 weeks earlier at Wimbledon when she beat Chrissy in the finals. And I just served and volleyed every single point. I came into net behind every one of Martina's second serves, and I eked out a 7-6, 7-6. There were 2 rain delays. It was back in the day before Mayor Dinkins changed the flight path, LaGuardia, so planes. You couldn't hear yourself think, and I think Martina just felt the pressure. So she didn't play as well. I played a smart match. My coach, Don Candy, during the rain delays, had some really good things to tell me. And then against Chrissy, we didn't play on the Saturday like we used to throughout most of our careers because of the rain. It affected her semifinal. So we played Sunday, and we played at 4:00. And then to follow us was Borg against Connors. So it was I was an amateur. I was playing with a Prince racket. I was the first major finalist with an oversized racket. And I was the last major finalist as an amateur. And, it was crazy. And then I went back to school the next day to my senior year of high school at McDonough School.
Oh, incredible.
So that's that one. All right, check off 1. All right, now 2. Martina called me October of 1980. She had won the U.S. Open with Billie Jean over Betty Stova and myself, U.S. Open of 80. And Martina obviously knew I could play. I'd beaten her in singles, and she just had a vision that we would be a good partnership over time. Fortunately, because Betty retired, I didn't have a commitment for 1981. So when she asked me if I could start playing in 1981, I didn't have to call up Zina and say, Zina, I'm sorry, I'm dropping you for Martina, because I would have been a tough one, right? I thought about this the other day. Like, I consider myself a fairly good moral person, but if I'd made a commitment to Chanda or you, Zina, and then Martina called me up to play with her for the year, that would have been a tough phone call, but I think I would have had to say, listen, I have a much better business. But that's hard. But anyway, I didn't have to go there. And then so we started in January. Our first title was Cincinnati. And then we went on to win, I think, 79 titles, 20 majors. And then that win streak of 109 straight, that was from, I think, April of 83 until Wimbledon finals of 85. So we went out in style. If our streak was going to stop. Yeah, we lost to Smiley and Jordan up a break in the 3rd Wimbledon final. We were going for our 5th in a row. Wow. So anyway, and then the last thing was best match I've ever broadcast. I think the most memorable match, I'm going to name 2 of them, was courtside, asking ESPN. I wasn't doing anything late in the day, early in Wimbledon, about 10 years ago. I said, can I go out and call from the courtside position the Isner-Mahut match? And it was at about 8-7 in the 5th set. Little did you couldn't have imagined. And it's hard to imagine that we actually saw a match go to 70-68. So I called from 8-7 over 3 more days, I feel like it went. But as far as like the most memorable major final, I would have to say it was Capriati's amazing comeback when she beat Hingis from championship points down in 2001. I was calling it with Mary Jo. I was in the play-by-play position. And just to see where Capriati had gone, she didn't win a match in a major for 5 years. Not one match in a major tournament. Wow. And then she started to come back sort of in, I want to say 1999, 2000, but she had so many lean years and she obviously had some difficulties. But that was an incredible win. And I just can remember trying to keep my emotions in check because, you just, as a broadcaster, I don't think you should ever get that emotional. You want to kind of let the emotions speak for themselves. And they did. Anyway.
Well, Pam,
I want to ask Zina. I want to ask one follow-up because Brothers on Tennis is curious. You mentioned the serve and volleying again, in that U.S. Open, getting to the U.S. Open final. Do you ever think that type of tennis will come back, serving and volleying every time. We've seen, player like Taylor Townsend, who used it beautifully at the U.S. Open last year, but still, doesn't do it every point under normal circumstances.
Yeah, I think because of the equipment and because of surfaces, I don't think we'll ever see it the way we did, but I think we will see it more and more in the coming years. I think that the volleyer will be less intimidated by the return game. I think, and so I think there's opportunities right now. I see it all the time where people are standing back or they hit the chip return, and there's so many lost opportunities because people aren't used to serving and volleying. So I still think it's a great play. It can be a primary in a match. It can be the primary play, or it can be like a change-up play. But certainly it's tougher. I mean, the strings and the topspin and the way, it kind of dips at you, it's much harder certainly to hit that first volley, but it's not impossible.
Well,
What do you think?
Kind of piggybacking off of that, I got two parts to that. One, first of all, all the challenges that are going on right now, that people are quarantined, have you noticed everybody's hitting a volley? I have been loving it. Just, my thing is maybe they will finally learn how to volley. And then hopefully they will be able to figure out how to put it into their game. But so what do you think about all that? I know you did the challenge as well.
Yeah.
And so what do you think about the way Roger put that? But I look at it from a coaching point of view. This is a great opportunity to teach your kid.
I actually think what tennis has been able to do so far, and I give so many different corners of the tennis world a lot of credit, from individual players. I mean, Christiane is putting out the funniest TikToks. You've got, what Roger did with I think his first post was sort of the trick shots in the snow in Switzerland.
Yes.
Went behind his back and between his legs. And then he did the volley challenge. And then what Kim and Andy Murray and Kim did in their lawn, they did the 100, and then on the 100th, she smacked it at him as hard as she could. And then Novak and his wife picked up the challenge, and then it's really been fun to see. And you don't have to have I'm lucky enough. My house, I actually have a tennis court. I feel I kind of have guilt. I have a bit of guilt, but at the same time, it's helped keep me sane. I'm lucky my son Sam's been playing with me just about every day. But you don't need, what I think it teaches you is that actually you can keep your things like the volley sharp if you just have a wall anywhere.
Yeah. No, it's exactly. Yeah. And I think for me, so I wasn't a serve and volley per se, but it was something I incorporated into my game sort of as my career went on. And, my coach at Benny Sims, the second part of my career, it was like you had to make a certain number of moves into the net, or after the match, it was going to be a bad dinner. So, it was just that type of, pushing myself to do it. And it was a way to kind of add weight to my game. I was never the biggest player. Had good speed, but wasn't the fastest, had power, but I wasn't going to hit everybody off the court.
Had power. You had more than just power.
So, I mean, again, against certain players who were fast or whatever, I mean, it's tough. So I felt like I had to kind of incorporate that.
Yeah.
But it's the mentality, for me at least, it's the mentality of saying, okay, I'm just going to make these moves. I'm going to get past a certain number of times. You kind of have to accept that. If, by a certain point in the match, you haven't come in a certain number of times, you're at a disadvantage, and it's harder. So for me, it's just more of a mentality. I think players can implement that into today's game. They just have to be a little more strategic. But a game like Taylor Townsend's, I mean, it can work. I mean, you saw it against Simona Halep.
That match.
It was incredible.
I'll remember that match against Halep for a long, long time. Right? That's who she beat 7-6 in the third. I mean, it was just, and I think it was like 178 times the net or whatever it was, because I was doing the match with Chrissy and we were just kept looking at the number, and it was like that was actually how I played. I mean, I would come in behind every possible short ball. Zina, you on certain services, that's how you played when you got the finals in Wimbledon.
Yeah,
you came in on every short ball.
Yeah, but it's funny because I had to learn it. I was a natural counter puncher. I had to, as I started to mature as a person, I learned to not to be afraid to come in. Laura used to always say, Zina, get to the net. Like, and for me, I'm like, no, I'm going to try to make the point or whatever. So I had to learn. So that goes back. that's a part of the question. The other part of the question that I wanted to ask you is recently I saw the article on Coco Groff saying that she had been depressed and all of the things that are happening to her and just kind of the thing, which made me think about you being in the finals of the U.S. Open at a very young age. Everything came so fast, all of a sudden people know who you are and all of that. What would be some advice that you would give her now?
Well, of course, you're trying to give advice during a time where, it's all new to all of us, is how to ride this out. When you're 16, you don't have the mature enough brain to realize this too shall pass. And I feel for the younger players actually more than I do the ones, because I've been asked a little bit about, well, what about Serena and Roger? Do you feel like they're getting gypped late in their career? I'm like, listen, we're not going to feel sorry for whatever happens. We're not going to feel sorry for Federer or Serena, whether or not they get a couple of less majors played in their illustrious career. But I kind of feel badly for the young players who don't have the maturity, I think, to understand from a life perspective that really difficult things can happen. Now, whether it's the death of a beloved one or someone who gets sick who's in your family and who passes away, and it happens over time, which is kind of what we're dealing with now. We're dealing with something massive that the whole world is going through over a period of time. And a lot of young people haven't gone through a period of grief or a period of great disappointment and loss. And that's kind of what's happening right now. I mean, look at Kenin. She wins the Australian Open. She's 4 in the world. She's had this incredible run, and it's just like, through no fault of anybody's, it's just stopped dead in its track. And everybody's in the same boat. I mean, you got so many people that are unemployed that are trying to figure out how they're going to feed their family. Like, what I think parents have to do, and I think Coco's parents are excellent at this, is share with your kids your wisdom.
Yes.
And perspective. Like, honestly, Coco Gauff's going to have all world talent when the pandemic's over, or when they allow limited play when they do, or however they do it. But there are things going on so much sadder than a tennis career being on pause. So you have to try and get at an early age that empathetic, big picture feeling.
Yeah, not easy to do.
No.
Well, we have Craig Gabriel listening in from Sydney.
Yeah, Craig.
Yes, hello. So a question about the ranking freeze, and he says Tracy Austin suggested the ranking freeze shouldn't count towards the number one streak. I guess I didn't hear the exact comments from Tracy. I think I did see a social media post that she had on it. But what's your opinion? Should the weeks count during this freeze or not?
No, I think the ranking freeze is absolutely the correct thing. I think they should have done it right. Did it when I think they waited like a couple of weeks till they had the right amount of meetings, and they realized the pause was going to be a lot longer than a month or two. But I don't think the weeks that Novak's sitting at number one or Barty is sitting at number one while everything's frozen, I don't think that should count towards even though they both would have remained there for a while. I don't think it should. But here's one thing I will say. In my time when I was president of the WTA, a really tragic thing happened, which was our number one player in the world, Monica Seles, was stabbed in the back in the middle of a tournament during a match. And we made decisions too quickly about her ranking that I wished we had just taken our time, let things play out a little longer, and then sometimes you get clarity. So to me, meanwhile, I don't think it matters one way or the other. You don't have to necessarily decide. Maybe at the end of the day, they'll say, we're going to give them half the weeks. Or I don't know. But I don't think you have to rush decisions that you don't have to make. And I wish back in the Seles tragic situation that we had just waited until we knew more facts and how long she was going to be away from the game before we made decisions.
True, yeah. And that's a good point, because we still don't know when things are going to get started. So at least wait until then to make sort of final decisions. I mean, there's time. We're not doing anything yet, so let things marinate a bit.
Right, and look
Right,
at
but
that, Pam. Look at that,
what?
Pam. You got patience, like being
Oh,
patient.
I know. I know. Listen, I'm 57 years old now. I've got 3 teenagers, and if I haven't developed, if I had this much patience when I played, first off, I wouldn't have gotten anywhere near as upset. I mean, I had a pretty bad temper, as Zina will tell you. I
What?
know.
I never saw your temper. So we played doubles together. Was it 91 or 92?
No,
Was it
well,
around
it was the year that
ish?
Cal Ripken broke Lou Gehrig's all-time record because I was part owner of the Orioles then. I think it was more like 94-ish, 93,
Yeah,
94.
94. When I was saying that, I think it's 94. We played
Yeah.
doubles, and you seem to have a lot of patience then.
Well, I was just grateful you'd play with this old player. It was 3 years removed from when I won. Natasha Zvereva and I'd won in our first time we ever played together. And I think that U.S. Open may have been the first time you and I ever played together. And Zina, I mean, literally, we got the semis. I think we got to the semis. But I can just remember the forehand returns. When I was up at net, I've never seen a ball whiz by me so quickly as a Chanda Rubin forehand return.
I used to call it. I
Yeah,
used to
Zina
call
called
it the
me
big
Big Hitter.
hitter. The big hitter was my name for it. What's that, big
It's my
hitter?
only nickname. My only nickname ever in life, and Zina gave it to me, and it's Big Hitter. but do you remember, Pam? So we had a match against Martina. I forget who she was playing with.
Manon Bolograf.
Oh, wow.
I remember Manon Bolograf, and I was kind of odd. This is Martina Navratilova, and I'm trying to be mindful. And Pam, you came back before, like in the middle of the game, before this one point, and you said, "Look, don't try to go around her. Just hit the ball. Just hit the ball. And if you have to, just hit right at her." I was like, "Really, Pam?"
Hit her. I said,
And I said, okay. I mean, Pam gave me license, and the very next point, I had a forehand, and I went at her, and it was just right in the right spot. She couldn't get her left hand here, she couldn't get it here, and it hit her like right in the chest. And I felt so bad, but I said, Pam told me to do it.
Yeah, we ended up winning the match. That forehand, that was such an intimidating shot in singles and especially in doubles, your forehand. Now, I remember that. I mean, I only played against Martina in doubles maybe 4 or 5 times, and I remember just about every one. I'll tell you another interesting one was in 1989 when I found out in the summer of 89 that Martina wanted to take a break in our partnership. And I was a bit devastated. At the last minute, Mary Jo Fernandez, new on the tour, her partner, Claudia Kota-Kilsch, was injured. So I asked Mary Jo at the last minute. I was thinking I wouldn't even play doubles. But she said, sure, I'll play. So we ended up getting all the way to the finals. Who do we play in the finals? Mamlakova, Navratilova.
Oh, my goodness.
And it ends up 6-all in the third. It ends up tiebreak deciding it. And we lost. I think it was 7-5. But it was still rewarding just to get to the finals, and there were some emotions that day.
I can only imagine. I mean, that's a lot of times how it happens, though. Like that karma, kind of. You just drawn to your partner on the other side of the net for some reason. Now, we do have another kind of question I want to throw in there from Jonathan Newman. He's asking, is there a juicy story you can share that you might have witnessed or been involved with that you're glad social media wasn't around for back then?
Yeah, actually, maybe...
I've had some interesting stories, but
yeah, you know what? I we can talk about this. I can't remember what year it was, sometime in the 90s. The best of my career was done, but I was still, especially on a grass court. So Zina and I were playing not doubles together in Birmingham, England, but Birmingham, England, but we were playing singles. And I had a stress fracture in my foot that I was trying on a grass court to get through. And because grass was a lot softer back in those days than it is now. But anyway, it rained a lot and we got moved indoors on a hard court. And I can just remember I was grumpy. I was in pain, and I just was so obnoxious. And I said some things during the match, and this was actually a great life lesson for me.
Yeah.
I said some things during the match, sort of muttered under my breath the way I did most of my career, but it was interpreted by somebody in Zina's camp as me saying something that was interpreted as being racist. And it was really a difficult moment for me because it was spoken about. Yeah, I think for both of us. For both of us. And you know what I realized though, and it's paid this. So this is now over 20 years ago. It gave me actually a great lesson that the words we say, if you're in one kind of ethnic group and you use a choice of words, you have to be savvy enough to understand what are some of the words that can trigger feelings of feeling less than. And that was the first time that had happened to me. And you remember who my coach was at the time? It was Eric Riley,
yes,
African American.
Yes.
And like, I don't know, it was an interesting thing to live through, but it was a great lesson. And Zina and I, even though, I mean, whenever you play on the tour and you play against me, there's always going to be one or two moments where it's a little bit, right? But we never really skipped a beat in our friendship.
No, and just to kind of tag off of that, it was a good lesson for both of us, because I remember going into the media, and they wanted to harp on it, and I was like, I need to talk to Pam, because just making sure. And I don't know if you remember this, but you said to me that, that you had thought about it and you saw things a little bit differently. You said that you had gotten a letter or something. Somebody said something to you or something. But basically, what I got out of all of that was that, both of us had known that we need to at least talk to each other to, kind of hash it out. And because I knew that if it just kept going, that it was going to, the media was going to blow it out and it was just going to get bigger and bigger. And, but I always tell people have asked me about that particular situation. I'm like, Pam came to my, 20th anniversary. We danced till we couldn't dance anymore. It was my 50th birthday party. You've always been there. We've always been able to talk about things no matter what. I've always appreciated you. So, it's just one of those things. Like you can't get through something if you just talk it out,
Over a period of time, when you know people over such a long period of time, tell me, there aren't very many friendships or relationships where there aren't the odd bump in the road. There isn't a misunderstanding. It's obviously in the tennis world because it's a public setting. Like I had a really embarrassing thing happen in 1981 when I'm playing Tracy Austin up in Canada.
Oh.
And a series of horrendous line calls, most of which went against me. I'd beaten Tracy for the first time quarters of Wimbledon like a month earlier, so the match had a little bit more on it. I'd never beaten Tracy before that Wimbledon, so this is like in Canada a month later. And when we shook hands at net after I lost a close straight set match and she was celebrating a quarterfinal win, and I kind of greeted her with a series of expletive deletives up at net as the only way Shriver could do it. And I didn't yell it. Nobody else heard it except Tracy. And then, it led to, again, going to the press conference and saying, what I had said, because people had noticed that she got upset on the court and was wondering why, if she won, did she get upset? And that was like, I learned. And then Tracy and I, it took us a little while to get through that one because that made headlines. We were like two teenagers, and it was like, I was obviously the one that was, I was in the wrong. I never should have done that.
Well, I have to also talk about one of my most memorable things I did with you. I went to Cuba. You remember that?
Oh my God.
I never forget.
I got to go twice.
Well, I'm just very thankful you took me and my good friend Mark, and we always talked about that trip. But I never really told you, I really appreciate going there. And I never forget stepping off that plane. And, I had a whole different thought process of the kids or people in Cuba. And I remember saying to you, like, the little girl knew my name, like Zina, Zina. I'm like, how? I just thought by that they didn't know anything about tennis, anything that anything went outside of at the time it was just communist or whatever. So I just want to tell you, thank you for taking me on that trip. That was like amazing.
That was a great trip.
To clarify,
Yeah, go ahead.
Pam, that was through your program, right? When you all took that trip, or what was the reason for it? Why Cuba?
Okay, so I'll shorten the story up. I had played in Cuba in '91 in the Pan American Games, which was played before the U.S. Open, and I won 3 gold medals. Very few. I was like one of the only ones. Kind of like I always liked to take the opportunity if I could to do something that I had never done before. So I played in the Pan American Games. Then I also joined the ownership group of the Baltimore Orioles in '92. So then it was some years after that, many years after that, that Baltimore Orioles decided to have a humanitarian aid relationship with, they obviously had some player development interests in Cuban baseball players. So they did a cultural exchange. And so my tennis clinic back in Havana was of interest to Havana because I'd won the 3 gold medals in '91, but it was also of interest because of my connection with the Baltimore Orioles. And they said I could take anybody who I wanted. And I asked Zina at the time. I thought since we had won the gold medal, we were great friends. Zina, it was just worked out great.
Well, I thank you because I still remember the mojitos.
Oh,
that's
my
another
goodness.
story.
By the way, it's almost mojito hour now.
Well, speaking of mojito hour, so we had a few glitches getting on. We got started a little bit late. So if it's okay, we'll go till about 10 after.
That's fine.
If that's okay with you, Pam, cool. But just for all those watching as well. But one other question we have, Eleanor Moritzen is listening and watching. So hello, thank you for joining us. Her question is, would you rather commentate from the booth or courtside, Pam?
It's a great question. If you'd asked me that 15, 20 years ago, I would have said from the booth every time. And now I say it would depend on the match and depend on the arena. Here's what's tough about courtside. And it's so funny because I have like there's the tennis court. It's my mouse pad. So when you commentate and you're in a booth, right? Here, when you're in the booth, you call it and you get to see the angle of the court. You didn't know I was going to come with props. Okay, when you're courtside, you sort of have that angle, right?
Yes.
So you can't really see the court as well. You can't really see the patterns of the match as well. But what you can see courtside is you can see the faces of the athlete better than you can in the booth. You can see the interchange between the coaching box and, there's never any coaching that's going on. And the player. You can see the chair umpire and things that they say to the player. So like the U.S. Open courtside position has brought me a lot of fun and memorable moments. But as far as like, if I could only be in one position and I had to pick, I would pick being in the booth because that's where you can really, really pick apart the patterns of the match and really stay on top a lot better than you can courtside what's going on during the match.
Well, I would say, Pam, I like you in both, but I really like you on the sidelines when you're asking questions because me knowing you personally, you're so witty, I never know what you might ask. And that's always, as a spectator, that's always a good thing.
Yeah, it's been fun. I mean, it's gotten a little harder, like with security, and the USTA has like more systems in place. It used to be when ESPN first got the rights, we could just pretty much, if there was a celebrity there, we just ask if they were okay with sharing a few thoughts about being at the US Open. And the celebrity would say yes or no, and most times they would say yes. But now you have to go through a series of, layers. So it's gotten a little bit harder, but it still can happen if you really want one to happen. It can happen, and always enjoy Alec Baldwin through the years. I can't believe they just had, I think, their 5th child. It's unbelievable. But it is fun to see. Like, I'll tell you an interview I remember was talking about baseball. Hank Aaron and the great Frank Robinson who's played for the Orioles for so long. I interviewed them both together. Placido Domingo, Michael Phelps after like one of his Olympics, and we're both from Baltimore, so that was fun. Will Ferrell, hilarious through the years. Coach Bill Cowher, like Dick Vitale. It's always interesting to talk to athletes or coaches from other sports. I always find those are really interesting.
Now, Pam, how do you come up with questions? Is it just on the fly? I mean, you're so knowledgeable about a lot of different subjects, different sports and such, but how do you come up with the different questions and sort of how those conversations flow?
Right. Well, at the U.S. Open, where it happens the best, there's a couple of stages I'll go through. Sometimes I actually have to do a little bit of homework on the fly, like that quick little Google search, and you hope your phone and the internet is working and the Wi-Fi. Yes. Because you want to find out, remind me what movies has this person, just like a refresher, or if it's an athlete, what years did they win their major titles in golf or whatever. So there's that part, doing a little tiny bit of homework. But to me, the best thing for me is you don't want to over rehearse it. You might have the first question, maybe a second question, but then you kind of really, the best ones are when you respond and riff off what the person being interviewed says to you. And so it's really important, and it's really hard to do sometimes because you're on the air, so you're a little bit nervous. It's in the middle of the match, so you don't want to step over the match if it's at a crucial moment. So you got to keep an eye on the scoreboard a little bit. And then you have to, maybe your producer's saying something in your ear, but you still want to hear there's a lot going on that you have to kind of air traffic control. And there've been once or twice where I've walked away and I've gone, oh, that didn't work out very well, but that's life, isn't it?
Exactly. Oh my gosh.
Well, the great thing about, like I said, you're real quick on your feet. You come up with some witty questions. There's one thing. So what we're going through right now with the ATP and WTA not being, we're in quarantine. Everybody's not playing. There's been a little inkling about possibly putting ATP and WTA together. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it should have happened years and years, decades ago. Imagine the power through the years. If the men and the women had joined together, that you would really get the attention of the majors, the ITF, everybody. The most powerful group in the world would become the Players Association. It wouldn't be men, it wouldn't be women, it'd just be Professional Tennis Players Association. And I love that they're coming together. In the pandemic, a lot of people are saying good things will come from this. Things are going to change. And I think in tennis, there's going to be some really good things too. I feel like there's some unity coming, not just from the two tours joining together, but I like the coalition of the three majors that didn't, the French Open kind of went out rogue and kind of selected a week without consulting. And that got, wasn't met with very highly. But I think everybody else is really being a good team person. And I think that could be great for the sport.
Yeah, well, I actually also think this is a great time. I'm really seeing what's happening to us right now is a total reset for the world, like across the board. And so it's just really giving us, like you said, pause. I'm saying reset. We can all sit back, think about what's going on, what we can make better, how we can come out of this. And I think it's going to be great. And I definitely think it's going to be great for our sport.
And I'm going to have time to clean out my pencil case here.
Plenty of time.
I think we all, if we don't every day look at some of the gratitude in this, because it's so horrible what's happening. There's so much suffering, and there's so many people that have died, and there's so many families that are just heartbroken, that if you focus only on that, then you're just going to go down the hole of depression and anxiety, and you can't let yourself do that. So one of the things I do is really look at the gratitude. Like, I've noticed there's more birds out. The wildlife is like more prevalent. The air is much better in LA. I mean, I'm sure it's the same in Houston. Well, Zina, you're in Houston now, or are you in Maryland?
I'm in Louisiana. Zina's in Houston.
I know you're in Louisiana. Where's Zina?
Yeah.
I'm actually in Houston, and it's funny you said about the birds. I went bird watching yesterday. So
Yeah.
with the
With your
We took
mask on?
pictures and everything.
look,
Yeah.
yeah, go on my
No,
go
it's
go on my Facebook, and you'll see I have the
Okay.
mask on the hat. But an
Yeah.
86-year-old woman got me to go because we've always
Great.
thought she loves birds. But I had the best time, and I took great pictures too. So
Yeah,
I
well, you
think
know what?
so.
I
yeah.
think new hobbies, new interests. I think it's really important that we take time to learn something new. Like I've learned a lot more science and medicine by just listening to these unbelievable experts that are trying to talk us through what's happening. And it's
Mhm.
fascinating. If you take the horror out of it, the sad part, the science part is fascinating. So,
Yeah.
while my kids are taking science and taking Zoom classes, history, English, Spanish, I sort of feel like I've taken a crash course in science and medicine the last month and a half.
Learning even more. I mean, that's all we can do now. We have another kind of question from Scott Hanover that I want to get in. Wants to know what each center court, stadium court is like to play on. Now,
Well, I'll
you
start with
all
the
have
one I
played a
played.
little more on some of these
Yeah,
courts than I have, but
yeah. Well, I just flashed to your great center court match against Sanchez Vicario, the Rod Laver Arena was that in '96?
that was 96. It was
How about that? Remembering here.
16-14 in the third, that one. Yeah.
See, I was broadcasting for Channel 7 and ESPN during that tournament, and you kept Australia on the edge of their seats because they wanted to see Courier against Sampras.
Agassi.
Oh, was it Agassi? Agassi and Sampras
Agassi.
was next. Agassi and Courier. Anyway,
Courier Agassi.
but then your match sucked everybody in, and they enjoyed it so much. The ratings were through the roof, and it was great. But anyway, Harvard Court's different. I mean, my first Australian Open center court, like Zina's, was Kooyong.
Yes.
So it was grass court. It had a slope to it. So there was a side where you literally
Yes.
you had the uphill side. You were like 2 inches taller down one end, which was great. That meant I was 6'3". And it could be really windy in Kooyong, really windy. Whereas today, Rod Laver Arena has so much protection from the wind.
Yeah.
So it's very different. The surface, everything's different about. And I did play a couple
Especially with
matches
the
on later.
roofs. Yeah, especially with the roofs now as well.
Right. So the one that hasn't changed is Chatrier, or it used to be Court Central when I first played. And it's just, it's just your regulation, big, wide open red clay court that I hated
Do you
to
think
play
it'll
on
be
because my
different?
game.
I mean, it's going to be a little bit different, right, Pam? In when the French Open, when Roland Garros is next held, after all of the renovation and such, do you foresee it being a lot different, Chatrier?
Because we don't have the rights, I must say I've sort of, I don't know why, I'm not as up to speed on the French as what I should. So they're putting a roof on both Chatrier and Longling, or are they building a separate stadium with a roof? I'm a little bit behind on what they're doing. So
Yeah, I think they took all of the, the stadium, the seats and all that. So all of that was sort of demoed, to get ready to build Chatrier with a roof. Of course, not sure what state it's in, especially with everything going on, but you would imagine even just the color, I think the color of the seats will maybe be a little bit different as well, and just how the structure
there's probably
is
no
in
rush
place.
to have seats. There's probably no rush to have
Probably
seats until
not.
like 2022.
Take him out.
Yeah. Just put the umpire's seat and the players, everybody's 7-10 feet apart. I wouldn't even have linesmen. Just have the umpire on a clay court. But anyway, to me, the most special one to ever play on was center court, even though I love the U.S. Open, and my center court at the U.S. Open was always Louis Armstrong. But Wimbledon center court just has something special because I think all of us feel that way.
Yeah, when you just walk onto it. Yeah, it's a different feeling. And also, these different stadiums, the sizes, is what you kind of notice. So the U.S. Open is this huge stadium. There's a lot of space behind, the baseline,
And
the
noise, and a
sidelines,
lot of noise.
and the noise, and it's just a different feel that you have to get used to versus, even playing in Australia, which, I always loved. And, we talk about Wimbledon, how special that is, just how you feel. It's almost church-like a little bit, especially when there's no people in there and you walk in, before. Yeah, it's amazing. So everyone is special for sure. But we are kind of getting to the end. So, I don't know if you had any last thoughts, Zina, or last comments, or Pam, if you had anything, but we just have been thrilled to have you on, glad you made it work. As you mentioned when you first came on, there's always challenges, especially, with the different platforms and everybody trying to get on. So we're just happy for those of you who have joined us today, and hopefully you enjoyed the show. Continue to follow us, Game.Set.Chat, on social media. We'll post with our potential guests. We have links up to our previous guests where you can watch those videos. We'll try to put some clips up as well. But this has been a lot of fun, Pam, and we knew it would be, but it's been a lot of fun hearing your stories.
Thank you both for thinking of me. I have great memories. Zina's closer to my age, so we go back a lot further, but we're a sisterhood, aren't we? We played the tour and went through the ups and downs, and
I think Pam is still talking, but we can't hear her. So yeah, but we want to thank you again, Pam, and it has been fantastic. You kind of cut off a little bit, but no, there you are.
I know. You know what happened? Someone called me, and I couldn't get I was trying to get rid of the call. Sorry, I didn't hang up on you.
This is live. That's what makes it special. It is live. You never know what's going to happen.
That's right.
But it definitely is a sisterhood, and it's been a lot of fun with you three. So that's it for today's Game.Set.Chat live. Join us next time as we keep chatting from a distance.
Bye.
Bye-bye. How do I hang up on you guys now? Leave the meeting.
Sam, you still funny.
I said